Morning, everyone. Whoa, can you hear me now? I apologize for the delay. We had a Zoom link issue that we had to resolve, so it appears to be working now. So hello, everybody out in virtual world or electronic digital world, whatever you'd like to call it. So thank you all for coming today. We really appreciate you being here to see what we can give you for updates. Our capital appeal team met and went over lots and lots of details as much as we could and came up with a presentation that Jeanette created, and she did an amazing job. So we're going to go through the presentation. I want you to know there are there's lots of information. We do encourage questions, but at some point, if we say we're going to get to that in a little bit, please don't be offended, because there's a certain flow that makes this work really well. At the end, obviously, we'll take questions, and if you have a burning desire to know something, we will along the way as too. But I just want you to know that we might end up saying that because we have slides that address lots of things. And let's get started.
Okay, first thing, I would encourage everybody to scooch up because some of the slides there's a lot of information, so they might be a little bit difficult to see up here. So if anybody needs to scoot up, please feel free to do so. So first, my name is Jeanette Kappa. I've been a member here for a couple of years now, and Deanne and I are the co-chairs of the Capital Appeal team, the CAT team, and I see some other members here in the audience as well. Next slide. Okay, so this is just a quick history of the capital appeal. We do have a 3-year goal. Our goal is $600,000 to be able to raise over that 3-year time frame, and we'll get into some of the specifics of that here in the next couple of slides. The 3 main goals of that capital appeal: we want to change the restrooms. Right now, they're not ADA compliant, so we do want to switch that. We want to update our kitchen, and then we also are hoping to get those ADA entries as well. Next slide. Okay, so let's get a little bit more into the history. So there was a congregational meeting held on October 17th of this year. There were a couple of things discussed, but one of the items that was discussed was this phase 2 for a place for everyone, all are welcome, that renovation. And there were lots and lots of questions during that session, and we did adjourn without a vote. There were too many questions. So the capital appeal team took an action to gather, and we tried to gather as much information as we could. We recognized that we needed a little bit more time with the congregation to both answer questions and then hopefully to work with the congregation to get closer to that $600,000 goal that we have. Next slide. So these are some themes of some questions that we heard, and we hope that we captured the themes of all the questions that we heard, but I can't guarantee we got everything, but we did our best. So a couple of things. How were the priorities determined? I mentioned those 3 priorities: the restrooms, the kitchen, and the ADA entries. How do we come about that? And we'll talk about that. How do we determine that $600,000 goal? We'll cover that as well. How well are we doing? Where do we sit today? How much have we raised, and how many pledges have come in towards that $600,000 goal? We do have some clarification. I should say not necessarily clarification, but different ways of viewing the total cost of the proposed renovation. And then we also have some different ways of viewing how could we pay. So hopefully we'll be able to cover all of that today. Next slide, please. So the first thing, how were the priorities determined? So we had the 3 priorities. We had the restrooms, the kitchen, and the ADA entries. There were actually 2 separate events that have happened previously, and both events came to very similar conclusions. The 2 big conclusions that were similar between those 2 events, and the events were in 2016, There was a space study that happened. And then in 2019, the council sent out a building priority survey. So those were the two events that we're discussing right now. With those two events, there were two themes that were very, very similar between the two of them. And it was the restrooms and the kitchen. Now, if you look, I do have the remaining of the items that came in on the survey. So if you notice, the restrooms is the #1 bullet on the list. The kitchen is the #3 bullet on the list. Luckily, if anything good came out of derecho, it was that our roof was replaced with insurance money. So the #2 priority that you see up there has been taken care of. If you notice the last 3 bullets down on that list, I just realized there's a TV in the back that'll help me. If you notice there, the 3 remaining bullets on the bottom, 2 out of the 3 bullets discuss ADA entries. So that's between the 2 separate events. They had very similar themes. That's where we came up with our 3 main goals of the building renovation. Again, that was the restrooms, the kitchen, and the ADA entries. Next slide, please. Okay, so how was the $600,000 goal determined? So we used guidance from the ELCA that a congregation can raise up to 2.5 times their regular annual giving for a campaign fund, for a capital campaign fund. We set our goal in early 2020. This was before the pandemic started. At the time, we had 2 items available to us. We had our 2019 giving, what we had given in 2019. And then at the time, we had an idea of what we thought would be given in 2020. Those were the 2 things that we had. So what we did is we used the projected giving from 2020 and we multiplied it by 2.5. That was the advice that ELCA has on their website. And after prayerful consideration, we did add a complexity factor. Now, I have to admit, I'm a numbers person. I like graphs. So if you take a look at that graph, we have plotted on there our 2019 giving and our 2020. Those are both multiplied by 2.5. And you'll see that 600 mark there is, you can see there's a little bit of a complexity factor out from the 2020 projected giving times 2.5. Now, we did have to pause, pandemic hit. So we paused our CAT team. We restarted a year later, but we did not update that goal. So that goal was set in 2020. We paused it. We picked up again in 2021, April. Our main goal is April of 2021 to April of 2024. Next slide, please. So how well is the capital appeal going? So you're going to see a couple of different charts trying to show it in a couple of different ways, and hopefully it'll better explain kind of where we sit today. So there's 2 pie charts up here. The one on the left that you see is the overall of the households that we have. So we have 105 member households, a part of St. Stephen's. And of those 105 households, we have heard from 26, either from pledges or gifts already. So that equates to about 44% of our total household members. Sorry, 46 out of 145. Yes. So 46 out of 105 members, it's about 44% of our total households. And you'll see that the green chart, or the green section in that left graph, it equates to about 44% of that total pie chart. Now, the pie chart on the right, that was the one that actually kind of surprised me a little bit. The pie chart on the right shows a pledge breakdown of the pledges that we have currently. The green represents how many came from members. The part that surprised me was how large of a slice that orange part was. That orange part is actually from either relatives or from friends of St. Stephen's. They're not members. So I thought it was a pleasant surprise. I didn't realize that many people had given from outsider members. So let's take a look at it a different way. Next slide, please. So in other words, if you look at the pie chart, I will say The green is good. There's two shades of green, and I'll explain that in a minute, but the green is good. We are about 60% of our way to our $600,000 goal. And you'll see that if you combine the two shades of green together, we're about 60% of the pie chart. Now let's explain a little bit between the light green and the dark green. We've got some more good news on that as well. The dark green represents the pledges and gifts that have already been received. So even though this is a 3-year goal, we've actually received about 50% of our pledges that we have so far. Next slide, please. This is another chart to try and explain where we're at with the capital appeal. So Reverend Kurt Nordby, he was our capital appeal coach, helped us come up with a chart of what example gifts we would need to obtain in order to meet that $600,000 goal. And he broke it down into what he calls leadership gifts, major gifts, sustaining gifts, and then many gifts under the 750. And he mentioned that our leadership gifts are typically the hardest ones to receive. And we are currently sitting at roughly 91% of those leadership gifts. Next slide, please. So this is where we get into some numbers, and I apologize, the numbers may get a little bit smaller here. So what is the proposed cost of the renovation? You'll see up there, we've got phase 1, and that's in green. That's because that's already been paid for. So we don't have to worry about that. That was a lot of the setup of what we've done so far. Phase 2 was the one that was discussed during the October 17th. And we will discuss again, we will have a vote again in late February. Phase 2 is to obtain the construction drawings and obtain those bids to move on to potentially breaking ground. And you'll see a low and a high estimate. Down below, we've got, I only put 3 options on this chart. We are currently not recommending option B. That was the most expensive option, so I left that off the chart here. You'll see the options below. The base bid, I would say, would be the bid number A. That has the restrooms, the kitchen, and the ADA entries. You'll see both high, low, and high bids on that. The other 2 options below, we also included in here because we heard a lot of questions about and concerns about those stairs out on, is this the north side of the east, on the east entrance. So we did include some of the bids of what it would take to replace the stairs and also the landing over there. So how could we pay? First thing, our number 1 goal is to either meet or exceed that $600,000 goal. And that's what the capital appeal team will be working with the congregation on here very strongly over the next couple of months. And we'll discuss that a little bit later. We also have some mortgage options as well. So in 2023, our current mortgage will come to an end. Our current monthly mortgage payment is about $1,600 a month. Our goal would be to not exceed that. We want to stay within our current means of today. So given the current interest rates, we do have some options. If we anywhere ranging between $250,000 up to $350,000, depending on if we want a 20-year mortgage or a 30-year mortgage. So let's look at some of these numbers in detail. Next slide, please. Okay, so I took option A and option C2. That was the least expensive and the most expensive. If you see on the $822,200, that is the least expensive bid or estimate that we have today. And I also took the most expensive estimate that we have today, and that's the $908,800. I pulled those 2 numbers down. You'll see that in the lower table below. So, and we'll get into viewing some of these a little differently in the next couple slides. So I took the lowest and the highest estimate. I said, we're gonna definitely meet our capital appeal funds. So I subtracted off the $600,000 from there. And I said, for now, let's let's do the $350,000 for the mortgage. That would be the 30-year mortgage. Now, if you notice down below, I've got some things colored in green. That's a good thing. That means there's a surplus. So if we are 100% successful, or even better yet, if we exceed that $600,000 capital appeal goal, we have options to reduce that mortgage. Let's look at it a different way. So I want you to keep an, oh, can you go back for just a second? I want you to keep an eye on that low estimate, that $822,200. We're going to continue moving that forward and looking at it a different way, kind of where we sit today. Next slide, please. Okay, you'll see that 822,000 at the very top of that table all the way across. And I wanted to kind of show, where do we sit today based upon the pledges that we have, and also the mortgage options. So based upon the pledges that we have today, we have $360,367 in pledges. If we subtract that off the 822, you'll see we've got three different options there for mortgages. We have a 350, a 250, and also the ideal state, what happens if we didn't want a mortgage? So the bottom one shows what we would need to raise. And this, I have to admit, this was actually a little bit of a shock to me in a good way. Once I started with these numbers, we're really close. We're a lot closer than I personally thought we were. So in the first column there, you'll see that we have about $110,000 or $111,000 yet to be raised to meet our minimum goal, assuming that we have a $350,000 mortgage. And again, you'll see across, if we want a $250,000, we have a $211,000 goal yet to be raised. If you'll notice on those two, we're over 50% of the way there on both of those. I would like to point out on that second column where we do have the $250,000 goal. Remember how I mentioned at the beginning where ELCA mentioned our giving multiplied by 2.5? That almost matches identically what our projected giving was in 2020 multiplied by 2.5. So that is achievable. Next slide, please. Okay, so what's next? I know I had a lot of questions as far as what can we expect in the future? How is the congregation going to be involved? When's our next vote? So I'm hoping to clarify some of that today because I had some of these similar questions as well. So first, let's talk about prior to the phase 2 vote in February. I mentioned that the CAT team is going to be working with the congregation here in the next couple of months, and I'll kind of describe how we're going to be doing that. So we've already met. We've sent out a question and a Q&A to everyone in the congregation, and hopefully that answered many of the questions that the congregation had, and hopefully we'll continue to answer those here in the next couple of months. Mid-December, the CAT team is going to send out another letter with a pledge card to all of the members of the congregation again. That'll give everyone an opportunity to either make a pledge initially if they haven't yet, or update their pledge. Next, in January and February, we're going to be reaching out to members of the congregation and working together to raise as much as possible ahead of that February 27th vote. So let's kind of imagine what's going to be next. So I'm going to think positively and assume that vote's going to go through on February 27th. What does it look like after that? What that's going to do is that's going to allow us to meet and obtain the construction drawings. We will then obtain bids. Now we have a budget goal right now along with that for that option A. Now, if you'll remember back to that original chart, the construction costs for that option A were between $758,000 and $806,000. So that is our budget goal. That's what the drawings will be drawn up to. Now, some things that we can do after those initial drawings are set, we will have to set our budget. Right now we have a budget goal, but at some point we'll have to set our budget. And we're going to be doing finish decisions. So what type of flooring? Can we Do we need to maybe do, you know, carpet that's slightly less quality than what we had expected? Same thing with the countertops. You know, the bathrooms, the finishes in the bathrooms. So again, the budget is going to drive the project. There will be things that we will be able to make decisions to bring down those costs if we will need to do that. You'll also see those arrows after that budget is set. We've got some light purple arrows down. That means there's going to be lots of information sessions that are going to be happening during that time. So once the budget is set, the building renovation team is going to have, they're going to have a kitchen team. They're going to have a plumbing team. They're going to be full of experts from our congregation. But at the same time, they want to get some of that information out to the team. They also want to hear some feedback as well. So there's going to be a lot of informational sessions during that time as they're making those finished decisions to make sure that we stay within our budget. You'll see the phase 3 vote. That's that dark purple triangle there, closer to the right-hand side. That'll be the phase 3 vote. Now I'm going to I have a cheat sheet here. I'm going to grab what that's going to enable us to do. We're going to be voting on the financial arrangements and also the final building decisions. So this is something that really helped me kind of understand, because I'm not familiar, especially from a construction project at the church level. What will happen is we will work with banks and MIF. I will have to ask, what does MIF stand for? Okay. 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 So to repeat that for those that are virtual, it is the Mission Investment Fund. So they're the folks that are going to be helping us. That's where our capital appeal funds will be are maintained. And they will also be the folks that will help us get our building loan and eventual a mortgage. So typically what will happen, let's assume phase 3 is going to go forward. We would obtain a building loan, and that will be working through that MIF and the bank to obtain that building loan. The building loan will be we will have an idea of what our construction costs will be. We will subtract off how much we have in our capital appeal fund at the time, and that's what our building loan will be for. Now, during the construction phase, there will be a schedule that the contractor will use to bill us. We will first pull the funds out of our capital appeal account to pay the contractor for those fees. Once we have exhausted our capital appeal fund, that's when we will dig into the building loan. Now, the neat thing is that during construction, we'll probably still continue to obtain pledges. We'll still contain gifts during that. So we will be able to replenish our capital appeal fund. And so we will continue to pay, if we have money in that capital appeal fund, we will continue to pay the contractor through that rather than digging into our building loan. Now, at the end of the process, however much we have had to dig into that building loan. So if we've had to utilize, let's say, $200,000 out of that building loan to pay the contractor, that amount is what goes into the mortgage. So even though that let's say we have a building loan for, let's say, $350,000, if we don't need all of it, that will not go into the mortgage. So we will only take out a mortgage for what we used. Hopefully that clear. Yes. Can we get Pastor a mic?
And the other potentially wonderful thing at the end of the process, because remember that our capital appeal wraps up in April of 2024, is that both during the building process and even after the construction is complete, we anticipate, hope for, and pray that we will still be receiving gifts. And so all those gifts that we have as of 2024 can then be applied to whatever mortgage we have to reduce it. as much as possible at the end.
And that's a good point too. Keep in mind, you can always pay off a mortgage early. So that is always an option, that we can always pay off a mortgage early. Okay, next slide. This is the fun slide, so I'm excited for this one. So this is something that appealed our family to join this church, is the mission. Mission drives a lot of what we do at this church. And so this was something that I actually didn't even think of when we first started some of the building renovation. But it was through some side conversations that I had heard somebody say, well, we could pair up with Meals on Wheels for a satellite site. I'm like, brilliant. Again, mission really drives a lot of things of what we do in the church. And so if I hadn't thought of some of the mission activities that we could do, I figured that there was maybe some other folks in the audience that also had not thought of that either, because I hadn't thought of that. So this is something I wanted to advertise about, some potential opportunities of mission, of things that we could do if we had a licensed light commercial kitchen. Meals on Wheels, a satellite site, senior lunches, or potentially a drop-in center, warming cooling centers in extreme weather, or potentially a full emergency food pantry. And I'm sure that our members can come up with other ideas of things that we could do to help the community with a light licensed kitchen as well. Next slide, please. Okay. Questions? We're going to be passing around a mic, so that way folks on virtual will be able to hear.
Okay, two questions. The mortgage, you say it will be paid off in 2023.
Yes, yep, you're correct. Our current mortgage, 2023.
When in 2023?
April.
April, okay. And we would be paying, if we take out a mortgage for the construction stuff, would that be before that? So would we be paying double?
So keep in mind, it will be a building loan. Before we have that second mortgage, there will be a building loan. And the only intent of the building loan is to help us pay the contractors during construction. So as we obtain invoices from the contractor, it is a chunk of money for us to be able to pay that contractor. At that time, we are not paying any monthly payments on that. Yes, Pastor. Okay, we do. Hold on, as we're trying to pass around the mic.
Okay. So what happens with what happens with a building loan, let's say the building loan is $400,000. If every time you draw out of that, so if the first invoice you pay is $50,000, the bank will start charging us interest on that $50,000.
Okay.
So you want to try to hold off using the bank's money as long as we can, and to use a small amount of it, but we will not be doubling the mortgage payment under any circumstance.
Good question.
Yes. The second question was, okay, we got the $600,000 goal that we are, and we have about $360,000 in the bank, and pledges going a bit past 50%. The thing that has me worried about this is that I think the people who are most likely to be contributing to this have already committed, yet we are expecting that the rest of that will get put together. Help allay those fears.
So I'll admit, we haven't pledged yet. My husband and I have not pledged yet. And I know that there's other people out there, like, do we intend to? Absolutely. But we were waiting for more detail as well. And I think the further that we get down the process, I think we're going to find families like that they're waiting for more details. And if you look at historically what happens, there's typically a lot of pledges that will come in even during construction. There's a lot of people that are visual, that they see what's happening and they're willing to do more pledges. Same thing during some of the final design stages, even in phase 2. I know that there's people out there that are more passionate about certain aspects of the project. If there are people that are passionate, for instance, about, I know for me, a mother's room is very important. I've nursed 3 children here in the church. I'm very passionate about the mother's room. And so I think we're going to find some folks that are very passionate about very specific things. And we'll start to pledge during that phase 2 as we're making some of those detailed design decisions as well. Because if we're out of reach on certain things, maybe if there are certain features that somebody wants in a kitchen, there's going to be families that say, do you know what, I really want to strive for that. Let's pledge a little bit more towards that. So I think we're going to get a lot more pledges as things are visual within the building.
And if I could jump in here, when I looked at your slide, we have a large portion of the congregation who has not pledged yet. A very large portion. Over
Correct.
50% of the congregation has not made a pledge at this point.
In on that, Jeanette's confession, if you will, that they haven't pledged yet. I have had a number of people speak to me with the same, Pastor, we haven't pledged yet, and I'm waiting for, sometimes it's more information. Sometimes it has to do with their own finances. There's certain things have to happen within their own family budget. So I'm not at all, I don't fear at all that we will not get any more pledges, simply because people have said we will, and I believe them and trust them.
And
I have a few questions.
as
I
I
have a few
mentioned,
questions. Can you hear me? Can you hear me or not? I'm on Zoom.
oh, you're on Zoom.
Yes. What's the plan for the Red House? Do we plan to continue to try to rent that out?
So to repeat the question is about the Red House. So at this time, we are not planning to sell the Red House. The Red House is pulling in the 2 main reasons. Number 1, mission. I know that, as I mentioned before, St. Stephen's really drives the motivation with mission. Like I mentioned before, it was a huge thing that St. Stephen's was set apart for our family, and that's why we chose St. Stephen's, is because of how much mission that we do. The second thing that some folks may not realize is that we do have some income coming in from the Red House. Now it's small, but the combination of both the income plus the mission, we believe that we want to continue with the Red House. The other thing I didn't realize too is if we sold the Red House, it would also landlock us. Right now, we utilize the yard over with the Red House as part of our backyard, and we would lose that if we were to sell that Red House. So the current plan today is to not sell. We want to continue with the mission that we have over there. We do have some basic but steady income coming in, and because of the landlocking issue.
Yeah, I understand that. I guess really what I was getting at was, if push comes to shove, if we get to 2024 and we're still 100,000 short, I was just wondering if in your back pocket, would we ever consider selling the Red House to clear 100,000 or not? And I'll just leave it at that. I don't expect an answer today on that question. My next question, what kind of revenue will be generated as a result of Family Promise renting our lower level?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that one.
Okay, this is Pastor here, Ken. Currently, Family Promise is paying $200 a month in rent. Now, they're only using this one room as their office. 2 rooms are set up as family rooms, but they're not actually functioning yet because the day center is not functional. And we've kept that rent, we initially set it low because in order for the day center to be operational, they need to put in ADA showers in the laundry facility. That is happening right now. And that they are doing that. They had to raise the money. It's a $20,000 project, what we would call leasehold improvements that they have taken on. If we were to sever our relationship at some point in the future with them, those facilities will remain here. So they are improving our property. And yes, their rent will be renegotiated once all that's finished and the day center is up and operational. And they are, of course, our work with them is a vital part of our neighborhood ministry. We're working together on a lot of cases. So
There's been over
What?
200 people, 208 people.
Sure. Just so that you know, there has been 208 people this year who have been served by Family Promise.
that's families, by the way.
And yes, and it is families, but families. So, and that is before any of the day center has been up and operational. So we are doing a lot of mission work that is through Family Promise that we are helping to support.
My last question, when, I assume the loan is going to be similar to building a house where you're charged a certain interest rate, but then once it's done, that's when you lock in the interest rate for the mortgage, which will be in 2024. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so the caution here is, of course, the Fed has already come out with the dates when they're going to start raising the Fed rate. You know, what I see in the Kiplinger is that by 2024, to keep the mortgage at 160 or 1,600, you're not going to get 350,000 anymore. You're going to get something more like 275, 250. So that's just something, that's just a caution, yellow flag to be raised here, something to keep in mind.
So if I can summarize, I think maybe what Ken's caution is that the numbers that we have for the potential mortgages are based upon the interest that we have today. Now granted, could those interest rates be different at the time, you know, a year or 2 years from now when we go to get them to obtain the mortgage? That is correct, and appreciate that forewarning, Ken. That is correct. Hey, Ryan, could you do me a favor? Could you go back up to the slides? It's how could we pay? It's where we're at today. It's got that one right there. So I just to kind of reiterate where we're at today. You know, for me personally, this was what I was the most excited for. I personally think we're a lot closer than what in the back of my mind, than what I had imagined before. So we will continue. We're going to be doing some cottage meetings as well, the capital appeal team. We're going to go out and see if we can get small groups together and have some one-on-one discussions with folks in the congregation in January and in February. So the capital appeal team, our goal is to work as hard as we can to get as many pledges in as possible ahead of that February 27th meeting. Can we get mics over here, please?
Is, so the capital appeal money is only for the renovations? And then there is a separate money for maintenance
That's
of the
correct.
existing building? Okay.
So the finances that you see up here, the 360,000, that is specifically for this project that we're discussing. These funds were raised specifically for this. Our maintenance fund is a completely separate fund. Good question.
In addition to Ken's question about rising interest rates, how are you folks factoring in the supply constraints, inflation, all of that that is happening now?
I would say the supply constraints, the biggest thing that we're going to have to do is be patient. In fact, we've got some neighbors of ours down the street that still are not in their home because of derecho repairs. No, I would say the good thing is that based upon what prices were 6 months ago, they've come down dramatically. I know lumber 6 months ago was terribly higher than it is today. So I would say the challenge that we have over the next couple of years is that it is going to be some ups and some downs. But like any longer term projects, we're going to have to continue watching our budget and some of the finished decisions that we make, so that way the budget will drive the project. Can we get a mic? Yep. So her concern is that the inflation rates right now are at 5%. They're predicting that it could come down, but it may not. I think we're going to have that with any project, that any uncertainty of the future. And I'll admit, for our family, the thing that I've learned recently is it's hard to predict what it's going to look like in 6 months. And I can't predict that, but I think we're going to have to continue giving the building renovation team input, and we're going to have to continue to watch our budget as things go. Yes. Can we get, oh, you have a mic. Never mind.
Yeah, I have. Thanks to John. Barb and I are over here putting our heads together, and depending on the time frame from when we break ground to when we will actually have to start paying on the new mortgage, there could be where our old mortgage ends and our new one starts. That monthly payment that we have set aside in our budget could go then to towards our mortgage, and so that can build every month. So
Robin, if I understand you correctly, so our mortgage is supposed to end in April of 2023.
yeah,
Let's assume today that we are not ready to take out that other mortgage until September of 2023. You're saying that those additional 6 months where we would not be paying a mortgage, but we have it in our budget to pay a mortgage, could then maybe potentially be used to, how did you say that, Pastor?
I said, bring the mortgage down.
Yes, bring the mortgage down. So for those 6 months, we could potentially be applying that $1,600 towards that future mortgage to bring that mortgage down. That's a good point.
correct. Thank Barb, because she's the one that thought of it.
Looking at what is the actual, I know we don't know at this point in time, but what is our estimated timeline for breaking ground? As long as we're not into that point where we're pulling from the building fund, that $1,600 a month potentially could be moved into the capital fund. So if it's a year, that's $19,200 to put a number on it.
I like the $19,200. Ryan, can you do me a favor and go back to the milestone? So just to kind of go back to a simple timeline, I do have some estimates, and again, they're estimates on a timeline. So if you notice in the upper left there, phase 2. So assuming that we would approve the phase 2 on February 27th, what would that look like? It would be about 3 to 4 months to obtain those construction drawings and the bids. After that, we plan to set our budget that's where we start deciding the finishes, and that could take up to 1 to 2 months. So based upon those, I am estimating that we could have a potential phase 3 vote anywhere between early July or early September is my gut feel. That's just kind of a time frame. And I believe, John, you said that typically, assuming that the phase 3 vote would go through, it's how many months do you think it would take to break ground?
What do you think? How long will it take us to break ground? Got to get a permit approved. Right now, CR is, it'll be a while. Right now, Family Promise was over 2 months in permit processing. So it's, when the congregation gives approval to the BRT to go ahead and break ground, I would say we're still probably a couple months out. Is that fair, Vicki, do you think? Yeah, so probably I'd say 2 months is probably a reasonable time frame for that. So if we approved in July, would probably be early, August, September timeframe to break ground.
And keep in mind too, that we would, for that building loan, we would be drawing from our capital appeal funds first before we'd be digging into the building loan. So I like that idea that if we can make that the capital appeal, or that the capital appeal fund last until January 2023, we could start supplementing ourselves with that $1,600 a month that would normally go into a mortgage. That's a great idea.
Sleep with the switch. Hold that way. That.
I don't have a question, but I have a reminder that our church is a mission-based church, and that we are, as a community, dedicated to what Christ's message is of love. And that even though this is scary, and it is scary, and there are lots of scary thoughts about it, we also need to have faith that the reason why this whole project has started is because the Holy Spirit has surrounded us with the idea that this is what we need to do. So yes, it's scary, but let us have faith that we are meant to do this, or it wouldn't be even started. Thanks.
I know we're starting to get close to time here. Are there any other questions? We're really hoping that we answered a lot of questions between the Q&A and hopefully this presentation. And we'll continue to reach out to folks, have cottage meetings, and hopefully be able to answer some additional questions. Good.
Yes, from the BRT, thank you to the CAT for doing an excellent presentation.
Good. Any other questions? All right, thanks everyone.
And thank you, Jeanette, for leading us through all that. She was key in making this understandable. I would like to say one thing before everybody gets up and leaves and we disconnect. I'm so glad Nancy said what she did, because I feel like there are details in the numbers and what's the carpet gonna look like, and what are the bathrooms gonna look like, and people want to know those details. A lot of that you're just gonna have to trust I'm asking the building renovation team. There's a lot of experts. People are good stewards of what our money is going to be able to pay for. So to some degree, we just ask that you trust that. And we are going to be asking for input along the way. So it's not going to be a, okay, we're in charge and you just have to sit back. That is not how we're running this ship, and we're not going to run this ship that way. So I want to reaffirm or reassure people that. But as Nancy said, this congregation is small, but it's been very mighty in reaching out to the community. I'm sorry. And that is one of the things that keeps me coming here as often as I do. Wow, I didn't expect to wear my heart on my sleeve again, but it's really important that we think about what we can do, what we think about, I think what our congregation is charged to do in light of what the Holy Spirit is doing, working through us, and that we continue to do what we can and expect the best from people, because this congregation shows over and over again that we're generous and we reach out to people in need. So we also, I don't want us to also be so afraid that we shortchange the possibilities of what we can do. There's a lot we can do, and I agree too, like the discrepancy between the 360 we have now and that 600 goal, it's a lot of money, but as Jeanette has pointed out today so well, and through input from other members of the capital appeal team, we're a lot closer to meeting our goals than I really realized even back in our October meeting. Like after she pulled those numbers together, I am so much more reassured that yes, this is really within our reach, but people also have to have faith that it can go forward. So thank you for all of that and listening to my wavery voice. Anyway, have a great Sunday and thanks again for coming today.